You don't lose someone you love in a single argument. You don't lose them the day they pack their bags, or the moment they finally say, "I can't do this anymore." No, you lose them in the quiet moments, the ones that almost feel invisible. It happens when you need something but don't say it. When you're hurting but stay silent because you don't want to start a fight. When you tell yourself, it's not that big of a deal, but inside your chest feels heavier every day. And here's the truth you may not want to face. The needs you don't speak don't just disappear, they sit between you and the person you love, growing heavier, turning invisible walls into permanent distance. That's how relationships end. Not with explosions, but with silence. And if you've ever wondered why do we grow apart when we never meant to, this is it. Right now, whether you realize it or not, those unspoken needs may already be working against you. Because think about it. When was the last time you truly told your partner, "I need you here with me"? Not in the obvious ways, not about paying bills or helping with chores, but in the raw, vulnerable way that risks rejection. Most people don't, because somewhere along the way, you learned that asking for too much makes you needy. You learned that showing hurt might make you weak. You learned that love means accepting things as they are, even if those things are slowly breaking you inside. So you swallow it. You smile through it. You say, "I'm fine." But every time you silence a need, you're not protecting the relationship. You're starving it. You've probably felt it. That knot in your throat when you want to say, "I don't feel appreciated," or "I miss the way you used to hold me." But you hold back, because conflict feels dangerous, because you don't want to sound ungrateful, because you've convinced yourself, if they really loved me, they'd already know. But when you believe silence equals peace, what you're really creating is distance. Imagine it like this. You and your partner are standing on the same side of a river. Every unspoken need, every unshared truth, drops like a stone into the water. At first it's just ripples. No big deal. But over time, those stones pile up, until there's a dam between you. The flow of love slows down, and one day you wake up realizing, you're not even standing on the same side anymore. You don't just want someone who shares a house, or a bed with you. You want someone who notices the subtle shifts in your mood, who looks at you and says, "Something feels off." Do you want to talk about it? But how often do you hide? You wake up tired, but you say you're okay. You're proud of something at work, but you downplay it because they didn't ask. You want their touch, but you don't lean in, because what if they're too busy? And so the cycle continues. And here's the brutal truth. If you don't express the need to be seen, you start convincing yourself you're invisible. And when someone feels invisible in a relationship, they stop trying to be present at all. Silence has a hidden cost. It turns little frustrations into unspoken resentments. It turns unmet desires into doubts. Maybe I don't matter to them. It turns everyday moments into evidence that you're not enough. And before you know it, you've rewritten the story of your love. Not because of betrayal, not because of lack of care, but because of needs left in the dark. That's why people say, "We just drifted apart." But it wasn't drifting. It was silent. Right now you may already see yourself in these words. Maybe you're realizing how many times you've swallowed your needs. Maybe you're remembering the last time you told yourself, "It's fine, it's not worth bringing up." But this isn't about blaming you. This is about waking you up. Because in the next part, we're going to uncover the core unspoken needs every relationship has, and why ignoring them guarantees heartbreak. We're going to reveal the real reason we avoid expressing them, even when we know it's killing us. And most importantly, we'll walk through practical steps to start speaking your truth in a way that deepens love instead of creating conflict. By the end, you won't just understand what's been going wrong. You'll have the tools to make it right. But it starts here, with admitting the cost of silence. So let me ask you, what have you been too afraid to say? Because that right there is the first place your healing begins. You've probably already felt it somewhere in your life. That quiet ache of wanting something you don't know how to ask for. It could be as simple as wishing your partner noticed the effort you put into making dinner, or as deep as longing for them to tell you, "You're still the person I choose every single day." You think about saying it out loud, but the words you tell yourself it's not worth it, or they should already know, and so you stay quiet. But the truth is, every person carries a handful of needs that, when left unspoken, can slowly erode the bond between them and the person they love. The first one is the need to be seen, not just looked at, not just acknowledged in passing, but truly seen for who you are, in the small details, in the subtle shifts. You want someone who notices when your laughter feels forced, when you're quieter than usual, when your shoulders carry more weight than you admit. You want to feel like you're not just existing beside them, but being witnessed by them. And yet, how often do you mask it? You wake up exhausted, but you say you're fine. You want to share a little victory from your day, but you hold back because you don't want to sound like you're bragging. You crave their arms around you, but you convince yourself they don't have the time. Slowly, invisibility becomes the story you tell yourself, and once you believe you're invisible, you stop trying to shine in front of them. You start retreating, and what began as silence becomes distant. Then there's the need to feel valued. Deep down, you want to know that what you do matters. Not just the big gestures, but the countless small ones. The way you care for them when they're tired. The way you put thought into the little details of life together. The way you stay, even when things are difficult. Love feels lighter when it's noticed. But when that need goes unspoken, something dangerous happens. You start keeping score. You start noticing what you give versus what you receive. You catch yourself thinking, "I'm always the one trying. Do they even see it?" And instead of saying, "I need to feel appreciated," you grow bitter. You stop giving freely. You withdraw your effort. Not because you've stopped loving, but because you're tired of carrying the weight without acknowledgement. Another unspoken need, one that many people are too afraid to name, is the need to feel safe. Safety in a relationship isn't just about physical security, it's about emotional security. The comfort of knowing you can speak your truth without being judged, mocked, or dismissed. It's about trusting that your vulnerability won't be turned into a weapon against you later. How many times have you wanted to share something real, something raw, but bit your tongue because you weren't sure how it would be received? Maybe you thought they'd roll their eyes. Maybe you thought they'd turn it into a joke. Maybe you feared they'd see you differently. And so you built a protective wall around your heart. But every wall that keeps pain out also keeps intimacy out. And slowly the relationship starts to feel more like coexisting than connecting. And then comes perhaps the most powerful need of all, the need to feel chosen. Love doesn't just thrive on history or routine. It thrives on the daily choice of two people saying, "I want you." Out of everyone, "I want you." That need doesn't disappear after the first few months of passion. It doesn't vanish when you've been together for years. In fact, it grows. Because nothing hurts more than feeling like you've become just another part of someone's background. Something they take for granted. You want to feel picked, prioritized, desired. And when that need is left unspoken, doubt creeps in. You find yourself wondering, if they had to choose me all over again, would they? Or am I just here because it's easier? Those doubts grow roots. And suddenly every small gesture, or lack of one, feels like proof that you're not really chosen anymore. Now here's the tragedy. None of these needs are unreasonable. To be seen, to be valued, to feel safe, to feel chosen, these are not luxury, they are the heartbeat of intimacy. And yet most people stay silent about them, because somewhere deep inside they've learned to fear that their needs will be too much. Or worse, that their needs will go unmet. And so instead of risking rejection, they choose silence. But silence always has a cost. Think about the last time you wanted to say something, but didn't. Maybe you wanted to tell them you felt unappreciated. Maybe you wanted to ask for more affection. Maybe you wanted to admit how lonely you felt, even sitting right next to them. Instead, you said nothing. You told yourself it was easier that way. But was it? Or did that silence become one more stone dropped into the river between you? One more barrier making it harder for love to flow? What's heartbreaking is that your partner may not even know. They might believe everything is fine because you haven't spoken otherwise. They may have no idea that beneath your calm smile lies a growing ocean of unmet needs. And that's how relationships break without anyone meaning for them to. Not with dramatic betrayals, but with quiet neglect, the kind that no one talks about until it's too late. But here's what I need you to hear right now. Your needs are not weaknesses. Your desire to be seen, valued, safe, and chosen, those are not flaws. They are not burdens. They are the very things that make love real. When you hide them, you don't protect the relationship. You deny it the oxygen it needs to breathe. So ask yourself this: what part of you has been longing to be voiced? What truth has been sitting in your chest, waiting for the courage to come out? Maybe you already know exactly what it is. Maybe you've rehearsed it in your head 100 times but never let it reach your lips. That is where the healing begins. Because when needs are unspoken, they divide. But when they are spoken, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels raw, they create a bridge. They open a door. They give the person you love a chance to meet you where you really are. The danger is not in being needy. The danger is in pretending you don't need at all. And if you've been holding back, if you've been swallowing words, if you've been telling yourself, I can live without saying this, ask yourself one more question. Are you really living, or are you slowly fading in silence? Because what we've uncovered so far is only the surface. There are deeper reasons why you've been so afraid to voice these needs. Reasons that may go back years, even decades. And once you begin to understand where that fear comes from, you'll finally see how to dismantle it. Even more importantly, you'll learn how to speak your truth in a way that doesn't push love away, but pulls it closer. When you realize that your honesty doesn't destroy connection, but actually saves it, everything about the way you love begins to change. Have you ever wondered why it feels so hard to just say what you need? Why in the very moment, when your heart aches for closeness, your lips stay closed? Why you sit across from someone you love, rehearsing the words in your mind, but when you open your mouth you only smile and say I'm fine? It's not because you don't know what you need. Deep down you do. It's not because your needs aren't worthy. The real reason is that somewhere along the way you learned that speaking your truth is dangerous. Think about your earliest memories of asking for something. Maybe as a child, you reached out for affection, and someone told you to stop being dramatic. Maybe you cried and were told to toughen up. Maybe you wanted attention, but every time you asked you were met with silence, or worse, anger. Over time you built a belief. If I ask, I'll be disappointed. If I show, I'll be rejected. If I need, I'll be too much. Those early lessons don't vanish when you grow older. They move with you, quietly, into your relationships. Suddenly you're not a child anymore, but the fear is the same. You want to say, I feel unappreciated, but that old voice whispers, don't complain, you'll only push them away. You want to say, I need you to notice me more, but that old voice says, if you matter, they'll just know. If you have to say it, maybe you don't matter at all, and so you silence yourself. Not because you don't care, but because you're terrified of what will happen if you don't. Fear of rejection is one of the heaviest weights a heart can carry. Sometimes, you'd rather accept the ache of being unseen than risk the pain of being told outright, I can't give you what you need. It feels safer to keep your longing hidden, to keep your hope private. But silence doesn't protect you. It only stretches the distance until one day, rejection happens in another form. The rejection of neglect, of growing apart, of love fading quietly into absence. There's also fear of conflict. You know how quickly a simple conversation can turn into an argument. You want to say, I feel distant from you lately, but you imagine the eye roll, the defensiveness, the fight that spirals from something you never meant to start. So you stay quiet, convincing yourself that peace means silence. But real peace doesn't come from avoidance. Real peace comes from honesty. Silence only buries the problem deeper, where it festers until it bursts. And then there's something even more subtle, the conditioning of society. How often have you heard phrases like "don't be too needy" or "love yourself first, you shouldn't need anyone else"? These messages sound empowering, but they carry a hidden poison. They make you feel like depending on another human being is weak. They convince you that longing for love, reassurance, or closeness makes you less strong. And so you push your needs down, telling yourself, "I should handle this on my own." But relationships are not built on isolation. They are built on interdependence, the gentle mutual exchange of care, of vulnerability, of need. When you silence yourself, you start to perform instead of connect. You put on the mask of "I've got it all together" when inside you're breaking. You become the partner who looks calm on the outside but is drowning on the inside. And slowly, the mask becomes so heavy that even love can't reach the real you anymore. But here's the truth you may not have allowed yourself to believe. Your needs are not a burden. Your needs are the doorway to intimacy. When you say, "I need you to hear me," you're not pushing someone away, you're inviting them in. When you say, "I feel unseen," you're not demanding too much, you're offering them the gift of knowing how to love you better. Needs don't destroy love, they guide it. They direct it toward what matters most. Think of it like this. Imagine standing in a dark room with the person you love. Both of you are fumbling, trying to connect, trying to reach each other. Your needs are like matches. Every time you express one, you light a small flame. Suddenly the room isn't so dark anymore. They can see you more clearly. You can see them more clearly. And step by step the light grows. But if you never strike the match, you'll stay in the dark, wondering why you can't find each other. Now, you might be thinking, "But what if I say it, and they still don't respond? What if I open up, and they don't care?" And that fear is real. That's the risk of vulnerability. But here's the deeper risk. If you never speak, you'll never give them the chance to show up for you. You'll rob yourself of the possibility of being met in your need. And if they truly can't meet you there, at least you'll know. At least you'll stop living in the limbo of silence, where love slowly dies without answers. Silence is a slow poison. Vulnerability is the antidote. But vulnerability takes practice. It takes courage. It takes unlearning years of conditioning and replacing it with one radical belief, that you are worthy of being loved, not just for your strength, but also for your need. So as you sit with these thoughts right now, I want you to reflect on this. Which of your needs has been buried the deepest? Is it the longing to be seen, to be valued, to feel safe, to feel chosen? Which part of you has been whispering in the dark, hoping one day someone will hear without you ever having to speak? That whisper is the exact place where healing must begin. Because you don't heal by staying silent. You don't build intimacy by pretending you don't need. You heal by daring to speak, by risking being real, by believing that if your love is genuine, it can hold your truth. And that's where the path forward lies. Not in burying your needs, but in learning how to voice them gently, honestly, and courageously. Not as accusations, not as demands, but as invitations to deeper connection. Imagine what would happen if instead of saying nothing, you said, "I miss the way we used to hold each other. Can we bring that back?" Imagine if instead of swallowing your loneliness, you said, "I need more time with you because you matter to me." Imagine if instead of keeping score, you said, "I love when you notice what I do. It makes me feel valued." These small truths, spoken with softness, have the power to transform everything. They can turn silence into dialogue, distance into closeness, resentment into gratitude. They can take a relationship that feels like it's fading and breathe life back into it. And here's the most important part. Speaking your needs is not just about saving your relationship. It's about saving yourself. It's about reclaiming the voice you've silenced for too long. It's about honoring the parts of you that deserve to be loved openly, not in secret. So let me leave you with this. The love you crave will never come from hiding. It will only come from honesty. It will only come from choosing courage over silence, truth over fear. Your unspoken needs have been quietly shaping your love story until now. But the moment you dare to speak them, the story begins to change. By now, you've seen how silence creeps in. You've felt the weight of unspoken needs pressing against your heart. You've recognized the fears that keep you quiet: fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being too much. And maybe somewhere in this reflection, you've already started to remember moments when you stayed silent, when you convinced yourself it was safer to swallow your truth than to risk speaking it. But love doesn't grow in silence. Love grows in truth. And the truth is this: if you want closeness, you have to let yourself be known. Not just the polished parts, not just the easy parts, but the raw, messy, vulnerable parts too. The parts that whisper, "I need you. I can't do this alone. I want to feel chosen by you, seen by you, valued by you." So how do you do it? How do you break a pattern that's lived inside you for so long? How do you speak needs that feel heavy without turning them into weapons? How do you let your partner see your vulnerability without making them feel attacked? It begins with softness, not the softness of weakness, but the softness of truth spoken with love. Instead of saying, "You never make me feel appreciated," you can try, "When you notice the little things I do, it makes me feel loved." Notice the difference. One pushes away, the other pulls closer. One blames, the other invites. And that shift changes everything. It also begins with timing. Not every moment is right for a tender truth. Trying to pour your heart out in the middle of a heated argument will almost always backfire. But waiting until there's calm, until you both feel safe, opens the door for connection. Imagine sitting together after a long day, maybe sharing tea, maybe lying in bed before sleep, and choosing that moment to say softly, "Can I share something that's been on my heart?" The gentleness of the approach creates safety for both of you. It begins with honesty that owns itself. Instead of disguising your needs as criticisms, "You never spend time with me," speak them as feelings. "I feel most connected when we share time together, and I miss that closeness." By grounding your words in your own emotions, you remove the armor of blame and open the space for empathy. And perhaps most importantly, it begins with courage. Because no matter how gently you speak, no matter how carefully you choose your words, there will always be risk. You cannot control how your partner will respond. They may receive your truth with open arms. They may need time to process. They may even resist at first. But the point is not to guarantee a perfect reaction. The point is to stop betraying yourself with silence. Think of the alternative. If you never speak, the relationship dies anyway. Not from conflict, but from distance. Silence is slow erosion. Vulnerability is the only path to growth. And if you want a love that feels alive, you have to risk that growth. You may be wondering, but what if I speak and they don't care? What if my needs go unmet anyway? And yes, that's a possibility. But let me offer you this. At least then, you'll know. At least then, you'll stop living in the haze of unspoken longing, always wondering why something feels missing. At least then, you'll have clarity. And clarity, even when it's painful, is far kinder than the slow suffocation of silence. Because the truth is, when you hide your needs, you don't just hurt the relationship, you hurt yourself. You teach yourself that your voice doesn't matter, that your desires are shameful, that love requires you to disappear piece by piece. But real love never asks you to disappear. Real love invites all of you to the table, your laughter, your strength, your fears, your needs. So let's make this practical. The next time you feel the urge to stay quiet, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what am I really afraid of right now? Am I afraid of their reaction? Or am I afraid of admitting what I need? Then instead of burying it, try voicing it in the smallest, gentlest way possible. Start simple. "I'd love it if you hugged me more often," or "It means a lot when you ask about my day," or "Sometimes I just need to hear that you still choose me." These are not grand speeches, they are small openings. And small openings, over time, create big change. It's also important to listen, because just as you have unspoken needs, so does your partner. When you open the door with vulnerability, invite them to step through as well. Ask, What do you need from me that I haven't been giving? Then listen without defense, without interruption, without trying to fix it immediately, just listen. Because love is not one-sided, it's a dance of needs, a rhythm of giving and receiving. And remember, this isn't about perfection. You won't always get it right. Sometimes you'll still stay quiet when you should speak. Sometimes you'll speak clumsily, and it will come out wrong. But that's okay. What matters is the direction, the intention, the commitment to keep choosing honesty over silence. Love doesn't require you to be flawless. It requires you to be real. And being real means saying I need you, even when it scares you. Being real means saying I feel unseen, even when it risks discomfort. Being real means choosing truth, again and again, because silence is no longer an option. So here you are at a crossroad. On one side is the familiar path of silence, the path that feels safer in the moment, but emptier with every step. On the other side is the path of vulnerability, the path that feels terrifying at first, but is the only one that leads to closeness, intimacy, and love that lasts. Which path will you choose? Because love isn't destroyed by needs. Love is destroyed by the refusal to express them. And maybe the most powerful step you can take today is to look at the person you love and say softly, honestly, this is what I need. This is what makes me feel loved. This is how you can reach me. It may feel like the scariest thing in the world, but it's also the only thing that can save the love you've been longing to keep alive.